Welcome to episode 61, Language.
Part 2. Part 2.
Because we couldn't get it done in our last episode, so we're finishing it up, or at least we're moving further along in this episode.
Join us as we talk about words with magic.
Stay tuned. Welcome to the Witchy Wit podcast, where we look at life through a witchy lens. I'm KImberlyn.
I'm Leilani.
At Witchy Wit, we explore current events,
ideas,
music and books,
and experiences in ways that recognize energy and life in everybody and everything.
We are both real witches.
And we bring two real perspectives through the lens of our different ages,
races,
and backgrounds.
With a healthy skepticism for what we have been told is true, our conversations are raw, candid, and vulnerable.
Join us as we cast a spell to uncover what we each know is true in our intuitive, witchy selves.
Welcome to episode 61, Language.
Part.
Continued. Part 2. Yeah, continuation. We talked so much about language. There's some puns in there that we actually got to, in looking over our outline, I think we got to maybe a fifth of what we had put in our outline. So we may not get much further, but we're at least going to try. We're going to do it. So
this episode will be focusing more on language in the ritual space.
Mm-hmm.
Last episode, I really loved what we chatted about, but we didn't get to the depth that we were looking for about language and witchcraft and ritual. But
yes.
Before we jump in or we begin to speak about that, how would you feel about checking in?
Sure, certainly. I would love to check in. My check-in is going to be, it's going to start with a book by Marie Bennett called Benedict. Whatever, called The Personal Librarian. And it's about a Black woman who ended up being J.P. Morgan's personal librarian. She collected all of the material for the Morgan Library, which is a huge, incredible museum. But she was Black, passing as white. Anyway, the part that really struck me was she started being a part of society at this time. So we're talking the 19-teens and 20s and 30s with the Vanderbilts and the Astors and the Rockefellers and all of those people, maybe not the Rockefellers, but, and one of the things, now her mother really wanted, her to get an education, and they were so fair that they could pass as white. And so her mother really wanted that. But there was one scene in which she had come back late from this huge party with all of the highest members of society, and her mother was a little resentful and saying, "Well, don't forget where you came from," and I'm just struck by that because I've read that in a number of different instances, and I don't get it that much from my family, but I was the first member of my generation to get a college education, my first member of my family to get a college education, and they were super, super supportive of that. But I think that there's always this fear on the part of these people who are really pushing up one of the members of their family that they're going to get left behind. That my head is either going to get big or I'm just going to become so used to talking with the intelligentsia that we won't have anything in common. And I was struck by that because we had this discussion with my book group about that. And then yesterday I went up to Killeen to visit my uncle, who is one of those salt of the earth type of people. And I just think about the difference in conversation that I had with him than what we're having, and then what I have with my book group. And they're just as valuable. And spending that time with him, picking up palms for Palm Sunday church and going to Applebee's for his birthday lunch and all of that sort of stuff is so super important and a part of, I need that to be who I am. And so a part that other people might think is important, and it is important, my going to college, my getting my PhD, that's all super important. That's just one facet. And I need these people who may not be able to have conversations with me about music or semiotics or whatever, but we can have conversations about what great Aunt Lydia did the day when they got her all liquored up on church wine. So anyway, so it's more about just that idea of family, where I fit in that family, and what that says about me and what that says about my relationship. I don't have a conclusion. it just struck me, so I'm sharing. Check. What about with you? What would you like to share about?
Well, first of all, I'm struck by your struckness. So
struck is the new vogue.
So I wanted to check in about something witchy that happened, and I actually haven't told you about this, so I'm excited for you to hear this story. So I had spring break about a week and a half ago, and while I was on spring break, I had my favorite podcast reached out to me. Like, I've kind of been in communication with my favorite podcast, like over Instagram. Just not like a lot, but just like slowly over the years, because I have a long time listener. So just like slowly over the years, I would message, and reply to their posts and their stories. So slowly over the years, a little bit, I've connected with one of the two hosts in particular. And this host, like almost a year ago, mentioned tarot in one of her she made like an off comment of like, I don't know, maybe I just need like a tarot reading or something, because neither of them are witchy. In fact, both of them are Christian. So I sent her a message and about tarot and stuff like that. And then she was like, well, maybe next time we're in your state, like we could get together for a tarot reading. And I was like, sure. Like, that's never gonna happen, And then over spring break, it came to light that they actually were coming to a town that's about 4 hours away from where I live, and that that I could come and see them. And so then we ended up connecting, and then she was like, can you give me the reading, and can the other host come? And I was like, what? And so then I'm like, shit, well, now I have to like figure out how I'm going to take off work and drive 4 hours. And so there was like the big thing that I want to share is there were all of these obstacles that I wanted to keep me from doing it, but not because it was hard, but because it was scary. Because what if I was rejected? So here's all the things that were in my head, like all my negative self-talk. What if they think I suck at reading tarot? What if they don't like what I have to say? What if they don't like me? What if I don't like them? What if I take off and I drive the 4 hours and they're busy and they don't actually see me? Like all of these things, all of these fears and things were like popping up. But my partner was super supportive and like cheered me on. But so long story short, I end up taking off of work, playing hooky, driving 4 hours to this small town in the middle of Texas, meeting up with them in their hotel room or their hotel lobby, and reading tarot for both of them. And it was super fun. I ended up hanging out with them for about 4 hours.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah. So it was really cool. And also, I'm really good at reading tarot. So like as I was reading for them, I was like, wait, I'm like pretty good at this. Not that I'm some sort of expert. But I would say like as an amateur tarot reader, like I'm pretty damn good, because when I read, I like to not just like read. I like to say, okay, so this is the suit of this. And remember, this suit means this. And this is the number this. And all fives mean this. So then when we cross that and this, then what that means is this. And because it's in this position, that it's meaning this. And how does that fit for you? And this, so I like to like really interact. And so it was a really fun experience. I was at one point in time, so we're there. And at one point in time, the person was like, oh man, it's like really cold down here, and they put on their jacket, and in my head, I was like, I'm sweating bullets. Like my pits are just like Niagara Falls because I'm so nervous and my heart is pounding.
Oh my gosh, that's incredible. I mean, just the story of meeting up with someone on your second favorite podcast but getting a chance to spend some time with him and to read tarot, something that you dedicated to last year. I remember.
Yeah.
So wow, incredible. Congratulations.
Thank you. I also want to say one last thing about it, that I also take it as a chance of being a witchy ambassador. Just as look at me, like, here I am, I'm just a normal person, I'm a teacher, I'm a partner, I don't know, I'm a human, I'm a movement lover, and I'm all of these things. I'm also a witch, but just like as somebody that they can meet and see and say, like, oh, she doesn't look like, fill in the blank of whatever.
Right. Yeah, I like the idea of being an ambassador. Yeah, and sharing some of our joy.
Absolutely.
Yay! Well, congratulations. And that's something we actually need to sit and read for each other. So, I mean, we don't have to, but I would love to. I would love to just sit and read for each other.
I would love that too. But my initial reaction when you said that, I was like,
and you would do exactly what you just did, and it would be fabulous. It would be fabulous.
I guess I have some like imposter syndrome issues or something we could talk about on another episode. We should do some tarot episodes, by the way. Remember, we put that on our list.
Yeah, no, I think we're going to do like a whole series on the tarot.
I would love to do a series.
Yeah. So, yeah. So you heard it here first, folks. But let's move on to, let's look at what we said we were going to actually do. So this is our second episode on language. And, just to kind of ease people back in, maybe we could just talk a little bit about why we care, like why we're talking about this. And I didn't know if you wanted to hop in or I can get us started.
Yeah, so I think just to kind of summarize, although I really love our discussion from episode 1 of language, our first episode of language, just to kind of summarize, for me, language is really important because language reveals a lot of my preconceptions about things, even if it's below a conscious level. And so by unearthing those ties with language, it also unearths and possibly can unshackle some ties that I have subconsciously or consciously with that use of language. And I like to think about language as like a pot of energy. And when I use a word, I'm plugging into that pot of energy and I'm adding to it and drawing from it. So we'll talk more in a bit actually really soon about language in a ritual space. But for me, like, I want to be really careful also in my everyday life, but particularly in a ritual space, what pot of energy I'm pulling and adding to. And so language is a really powerful way for me to do that. That's kind of my summary. What about you?
Yeah, I think it's super important because language, I use language to communicate to things outside of myself. And then I also use language to communicate to myself. Right. And so, and my inner voice never fucking stops. It's constantly going. And that's a lot of power, right? Because one of the things I love when I do work with you is you say something 3 times to make it a spell. And so when I say the same thing over and over and over again, whether it's positive or negative, I'm creating a spell. And so the thing I love about talking about language is that it helps me to become sensitive. And that's one of the things as we talk about the things that we're going to be, as we delve into language in ritual space, that idea of being super, super sensitive to the power of it, because it has the power whether or not we are aware of it. And if I can be super aware of it, I can use it. I can use it to help me do what I need to do. Or it can kind of use me to keep me where I am. And so I love, sitting down and talking. And I just love talking about language anyway, right? But I love the idea that we're talking about it with something that we do sometimes intuitively, sometimes super, super intentionally, and getting to share that.
Oh, I love the way you put that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think that also kind of brings into this concept of air quotes microaggressions, and mm-hmm. I say that microaggressions I think is a pretty good word, but they're actually not really microaggressions. I personally think they're not really microaggressions. to me, there's still aggression. There's still aggression.
Mhm.
But whenever I use language that is not as precise as it could be with the meaning or the history of that word or the connotations with that word, it can really impact the receiver, or myself if I am, saying it to myself. So I like to really think about language, even if I'm just saying smaller comments, they can have a really big impact. And I want to make sure that I'm putting my energy in the places that I want to, that my intent is going for. And I know last episode we talked about intent versus impact and like, some words that have been used as a microaggression, like with me and stuff like that. But I just think it's really, really important.
I agree, and that idea of microaggressions, they no longer, for me, particularly with with self-talk, it can be a microaggression because it's just one word, right? And so I might think of it, I'm just, we're having a conversation. I don't really have to think. I can just throw out. I can just kind of just respond, not unthinkingly. And you would be very loving and maybe share with me, perhaps you might want to choose this or, consider this, et cetera, et cetera. But even that level of unthinkingness, I don't know if that's a real word, can have such impact on someone else, right? And can have such impact on myself. And so I think that that whole idea of just, that awareness and that there was something else that you said, and I can't remember now. But I love how we can take this tool and we can use it to make this place better and make this world, use our language to help people to do what they need to do or to think the way they want to think, et cetera, et cetera.
Agreed.
Yeah, there was something else you said and I can't remember, but it'll come back to me.
Do you want to jump in and start talking about like words as spells and energy and a magical practice?
Yeah. So I think the beauty of a word is that it is a sound that we can use not in a limiting way, but where we can kind of put that sound in a box, or we can explore the ways in which that sound opens up thinking, et cetera, et cetera. And so, that idea of being sensitive to that power is pretty damn sexy. I mean, that I can use a sound, and that sound has so many different connotations and meanings, and I can focus on one and play with that, or move to another one and play with that. And it's kind of like I don't know, ritual punning or something, where you take a word and play with all the different ways you can utilize it. But I'm going off task, I think. Could we talk first about invitational or permissive, maybe
language?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's the word. Okay, that's the word I'm looking for. Because that's one of the things I'm actually working with someone in our group and on thinking about that, because that's not a part of our culture. That's not a part of our culture. If I'm a manager, I tell you what to do, you do it or you don't do it, and then we have more words based on that. And one of the things that I love about the direction of our group is that we have become so focused on individual experience and the language that encourages that. And so I'd like to talk a little bit briefly about that, if that's okay. And so is that all right? Okay.
Yes, please.
So one of the things, one woman in our group actually created a whole list. I don't know if you remember, of words that you can use to encourage. So an example might be, I could do a guided meditation where I say something like, okay, now let's all take deep breaths and, close our eyes. And we're all going to go to Bridget's forge, and we're going to pick up this hammer and we're going to use it to hammer out justice and blah, 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 right? And then but using open-ended language where you ask questions, or I ask people to what if, or consider, that opens that word up, as opposed to making everybody think of that word the same way. And so I would love to see that. I try to use that now when I teach, but should I give a couple of examples of that?
I think so.
Yeah, so I mentioned going to Bridget's Ford and Ford. I always keep saying Forge, and so another way of thinking of that might be, and if you look in the distance, what do you see? Could it be you see a woman working at a forge? Do you see, could you see, what is around her? Is it mist? Is it, so you can suggest some things, but you're leaving it open for people to have their experience. And they might, look through the trees and see the trees as a veil of green leaves, or they might look through the trees and see the trees as a veil of lace. And so they're sitting in a boudoir, or you know what I mean? So, and I love that, because I have sat through so many guided meditations where I am so not where they are. And so that language allows me to have my experience, which will be similar, different, the same, I don't know, but it allows me to have my individual experience, which I think is super, super powerful.
I love that. For me, the opposite of permissive language is directive language. Mm-hmm. And the directive language, while it does exactly, maybe the speaker may think it's doing exactly what they want, go to Bridget's Forge, pick up her hammer, destroy the limiting belief or whatever it is. To me, it reminds me of that thing that you always say, this or something better. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes for me, whenever permissive language is used, what do you see? What calls to you to do this work? How will you destroy what is holding you back? Like if I use that permissive language that's open, then a lot of times the people in our group come up with way better things than I just thought I'd pick up the hammer and destroy it in my meditation. But they're like, I don't know, calling up the fires of the earth and incinerating it, or using her waters and cleansing it and transforming it into something else. I don't know, but oftentimes it's so much better. And I do want to share, going back to my check-in, when I went to watch those podcast hosts, my favorite podcast hosts, they were speaking at a chapel, and I was like, that's fine. I want to hear them talk. Like, chapel, no chapel, like this witch will go wherever. Woo! Doggies. So I went into the chapel, and like listening to them speak was great, because they were them, which is what I love. And the before and the after, I was struck by how directive the people who were leading the it wasn't really a church service, but they like prayed and then they sang a song, and then they spoke like for about 5 minutes before, but they were just telling me, speaking to me, the audience, they were telling the audience, this is what this means, and this is what we need to do, and you need to go do this, and this is what this really, really means. So you should be thinking this. And I found myself sitting there, and at first I was like, fuck you. Like, don't tell me, like that was my first reaction, was I felt flared up. I was like, I feel myself like poofing up. Like, but then I got curious, and I was like, okay, I'm feeling triggered. Like, what's going on? And it was really interesting for me to sit there and be like, oh, it's the directive language. Mm-hmm, that person is telling me how I'm supposed to behave and what I'm supposed to do and what is right and what is wrong. And then it made me think about, wow, I guess I'm so used to our circle where we really take permissive language seriously. And so I'm used to, what I really boiled down to, and what I want to share is, I'm used to being trusted to have my own experience. And I'm used to being trusted to come to my own conclusions and trust my own wisdom. And what I felt like was, in that situation, I was not being trusted. I was being told, this is what this means. This is what you need to do. I'm praying for you. And then you agree with me and think the things, you know? So it made me really value this permissive language and what it means.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that it's, and I'm not sure what their thinking is, but it sounds so much to me like that type of thinking where I'm afraid you're going to, like, if I'm giving a lecture and I'm afraid the class won't get these things, so let me just tell them, as opposed to, let's take a moment and let's listen to these pieces. What do you hear? Mm-hmm. And, you know, so, but it you know, it's faster. Like, you don't have, you know what I mean? You don't have to sit there and, you know, ask, it doesn't have to be the Socratic method, right? And you can get them there faster, and just in that way, you don't have to be concerned like they're going to miss the point. You know, mm-hmm. I can say, this is the point. Okay, now let's move on. And this is the next point. And this is the next point. Okay, you write it down or whatever. I when you put it that way, it's like so clear. It's so clear. It's so clear. So let's talk a little bit about what that looks like. And it's so funny because I just did a ritual for the equinox, and the people who were involved with that were really, which I loved, were really invested in maintaining. The whole ritual was about Earth, my lover, but it's also about how the ways in which we can be open, and we can add our energy to that of the world. You know, the world will heal itself, but we can add energy so that it can use our energy where it should go. And so one of the things that I thought was important is, like, I might be really concerned about, you know, ecology and climate change, but I'm just sending my energy to the earth and letting her decide where it needs to go. And she might say it needs to go to these dams in India, or it might need to go, you know. And so that was, I wouldn't say frightening for me, but it was a little bit edgy for me to not have a real focus on that, and to allow each woman to make these decisions, you know?
Yeah, I'm really hearing the power of trusting each person at the ritual to make their own decision, and also trusting in the earth to make her own decision on where that energy is going to go.
Trust. I think that, yeah, you said that earlier. Trust is so important. And that's scary. Trust is scary too, right? Because
for me, it is.
For people who have control issues. Because it's and sometimes let's not go there, because we could talk about trust issues again. But one of the ways that looked at this ritual, if I can talk a little bit about that, is so one of the things that a lot of traditions would use as a part of their ritual is calling the directions, or calling the elements, and, you know, invoking them. And so invoking as in bringing them into this, or bringing their energies or whatever into the circle to support us, or to guide us, et cetera, in our work, and to protect us. And so, but when we think about this, so let's take the elements. When I think about it, I can call the air into my circle, but I'm breathing, I'm talking, the air must already be there. Right? So what exactly am I doing? And what we were thinking is that what we're actually doing is acknowledging the holiness of air that's already there, and asking for the power to support us as we do our work, or something along those lines, right? And then another person in the planning said, and you know, we talk about air and the East, et cetera, but, you know, could we be even a little bit more open and not necessarily make it air or make it East, but, you know, ask the women, as I think of the East, or as I think of air, what do you feel around you that you can call upon to protect our circle? Your eyes went really wide, and it's like, what? They're not going to call air? I wanted air, but, you know, it's not just I'm not the only one in that circle. Right. Yeah. And the power, this is the same person that did that super, like that almost fire and brimstone elemental call the month before, and it was so, because I'm guessing every woman had their own, like some might have been calling the watchtowers of the East, you remember, that kind of stuff, or someone might be calling air, someone might be calling connection, someone might be calling song, or so it was, and it just made the energy of the circle so rich, because we weren't limiting it to this one thing that I thought was important to be there. So and again, trusting someone to do something that was different from what I had in my head, and then trusting the women in the circle to bring their stuff to it too.
Wow.
Yeah, it was wow.
Wow.
It was wow.
It just seems really powerful, creating that space for each person to bring their own wisdom and experience.
Yeah, and it made me realize, see, this is again, once I start thinking about words and thinking about the ways of opening up how they're being used, it makes me think about how I often use them, which actually reflects in some of these instances I just mentioned, actually reflects a little bit of this human arrogance that some of us have. And that's, well, I am the top of the food chain. I am, this is my dominion. And so I am calling in air, and I am calling in fire, and and it's there already, and it's looking at you like are you an idiot? It's like, what? How are you not feeling it?
Yeah. And if speaking as someone who considers myself an elemental witch, if I worship, we're just talking about air. If I worship air and I'm like, air, hail and welcome air, like part of me is thinking that like air might be like, bitch, I'm already here. I was here before you, and I will be here long after you. Like, where the hell do you get calling me in? Like, you're in my house. You're breathing me. How about, so for what, and that's sassy, Leilani, but like, instead of me calling in air and like welcoming air in, you're so right. It's way more accurate for me to say air is here. Air is present. Air is sacred. Air is here long before we came, and will be here long after we go. And holding that energy is way more getting to the intent of what I really would want instead of the other things.
Celebrating. Yes, exactly.
That is like mind blowing for me. Just so our listeners know, this is like not a long held understanding for me. This is pretty new in my ritual practice.
Me too. And so again, once I start thinking that, so where are the other areas where my arrogance or my short-sightedness or my limiting beliefs are holding you back? And so the thing I love about this process is, once I start doing this in this one area, then I get nudges elsewhere. It's like, oh, okay, now what about us? What about the, so I mentioned the elements, but there's also one other thing that that it reflects is what I'm asking is not, hopefully what I'm asking is not, okay, I'm in control of this space here. Come in, you come here, you stand over there, you air, you come here, fire, you come here. And kind of, again, control, right? Arrogant, being arrogant, thinking that I am the center of the world and everything kind of revolves around me, though, whatever. But allowing me to recognize that I am one beautiful part of this beautiful existence, but I'm just a part of it. And without me, it won't be here, because that one little facet won't be here, but it's just one facet. And that's a good thing. It doesn't mean that I'm not important. It means I'm super important, because all of those facets need to be there for the world to be beautiful, but I'm just one facet. And so that was mind blowing. And then, can I tell you one other? And then
Please do. I like, as an armchair linguist, I just find all this incredibly powerful.
Well, another thing and this was a point that was brought up by another a person who was helping me, who was a part of the ritual planning. And she said, since we're talking about Earth, my lover, and we're talking about our relationship with the earth, well, when you're in relationship with someone, if I'm in relationship with you, all my talking isn't to somebody else about you. Like, oh, Leilani is wonderful. She's this. She sings great. She plays drum. Blah blah blah. And sometimes,
I said, I'm right here. You can talk to me.
Exactly. So sometimes my relationship means I actually talk to you and say, Leilani, how are you doing? What are you're so great. I love you. That kind of stuff, right? So a real relationship means you're actually talking to the thing that you're supposedly loving, right? Mm-hmm. And so she suggested that we do chants that actually sang to the earth instead of about the earth. I mean,
okay. I'm just going to need some time to chew on that.
So, yeah, I mean, so I'm just so
true.
Yeah, just singing instead of the earth does this and I'm do this and da da da. No, I love you, or I can't remember the ones that we sang, but singing to the earth.
Yeah, because I mean, like if the earth is my lover, like I want to be doing stuff directly with the earth,
not talking about the earth to other people, right? Yeah, so that was I mean, when she said that, it was like, whoa, I had to sit back for a moment and just wow, yeah. So that was an important thing. And then, and this is kind of taking us a little bit off kilter, but since it had to do with this ritual, it was so much about the earth, one of the places where there's so many chants about the earth comes from a number of indigenous communities in our country and elsewhere. And another element of being sensitive to the power of words is recognizing that we are borrowing someone else's relation. When we're using, first of all, we're appropriating their music. So, that there's a big issue there where we're taking other people's music and using it in the way that they are not intending. And using it for because we like it, or okay, because it's to the earth, yay. But also when I'm taking your words of relationship to the earth, then that means I am also taking your relationship and saying it's my relationship. So does that make sense? So
it does make sense.
Mm-hmm. And so what does that mean? Well, aren't we supposed to forge our own, wouldn't it be wonderful? Wouldn't it be impactful? Wouldn't it be powerful if everything we did in our ritual actually reflected us? I mean, go figure.
Everything that you're saying, it's just that simple. But it's also, in that simplicity, it's also just that complicated. And we're not just making 2 podcast episodes about language for fun. Like, it's because it's that complicated and it's that hard to institute. It's just not, we open the box and suddenly our language is like perfectly reflecting our intent. That's why we're really digging into it. It's just that simple, but it's just that complicated.
Yeah. And actually that's going to take us, I think that could take us to our next step, which is about the, traditions, music, et cetera, of indigenous peoples, and utilizing their knowledge in our work.
I want to just first say, like, this is really important to me, and I want to be really transparent. I have never acknowledged indigenous peoples' land or the people at the beginning of a ritual that I have spearheaded. So I just want to be straight up with our listeners. I'm not some sort of all awesome person. I've had it done in a couple of rituals that I've been at, and it has really rocked me. And it's been really profound, and it's made an impact on me. And that's one of the reasons why I really wanted to talk about it, because I just want to be transparent and say, I walk around, and a lot of times I don't even think about the fact that there were people walking this land long before I was here, or the people who built my house in 1983 were here. I even live my house backs up against a park that is on the tallest point in Bexar County, the county that we live in, and it's called Comanche Hill because the Comanche Indians were here and used it as a lookout. And like I drive past it all the time, and then I'm like, after one ritual that we did where somebody did a land acknowledgement, I was driving home and I like drive past the sign and I was like, well, shit. Huh.
Yes. And the Comanche were actually like latecomers to it, but still they were here. And for a number of different reasons that we won't get into in this episode, but when we talk about social justice, we'll talk about it. They're no longer here, but they had, I'm sure, a pretty profound relationship with the earth. And now we're here. And how does the earth feel about it? That idea is like, so the earth lived in harmony for centuries, for millennia, with the people and the beings and the animals and the bees and the beavers and all that sort of stuff. And then we get here, cut all that shit down, throw up our San Antonio cities and, pave over the Riverwalk and
build our fences.
Build our fences. And yeah.
Dry up water.
Yes, exactly. And feel super, super on top of, in control. And wow, this is stuff that we have made. And she's just laying under there going, oh, people. You'll figure it out eventually, or not, or you won't, whichever. But the idea of the land acknowledgement, we try to weave it in and out of the ritual, is just makes me more aware of where I am in this, where my little link in this chain is. And I just think that's that again, using words to help us be better us's.
Mm-hmm. And another connecting theme to this that's similar but a little bit different. I also know we have a chant that we sing that I'm not super, I don't know that we've ever come to like a for sure definitive research backed conclusion, but I know that we've all, like a couple of us have been looking into it, and it's like an indigenous soundish, but it is not indigenous, but it's like kind of
it borrows all of the musical tropes of indigenous music. Mm-hmm.
But it is not that, but it is like trying, I don't know if it's trying to pass for that, or but it's mimicking that. And I've sang that song a lot. In fact, I sing that song every time I'm in a plane. I sing it as in my head, mostly, like in my head as a prayer, as the plane takes off and as the plane lands. That's just kind of a thing that I've done for a couple decades now. But it was brought up that it may not be the type of energy that I want to have, because it's not authentic to honoring them and the indigenous people's practices. Do you have anything that you wanted to share about that?
Mm-hmm. I do. Basically, yeah, we're gonna throw you off. We're gonna kill you. We're going to take away your voice. We're going to take away your power. We're going to take away your connection to this earth. And then we're going to make music that sounds like your music, because we want to be you, though we don't want you here. Whoa, sorry. Well, I might have overshared a little bit there.
Oh, please. Thank you so much. Please say more.
But it's just that idea that and I hadn't been sensitive to this too. So, I don't want to make it sound like I have been this charge of justice all my, I sang these songs too. And I loved these songs because it made me feel like I'm closer to people that are not allowed to be on the land that they lived on. Because, not necessarily because me individually, but because I'm participating in a culture that systematically eradicated them. and then said, but we really like your music. So even though you're not here anymore, you can live on a little bit because I'm going to sing your shit. And so recognizing their power, the power of these peoples who lived in harmony and in connection with the earth, and trying to tap into that connection by using music that's either their music or sounds like their music, but not recognizing how literally as a people they've been ripped and raped by our culture, has been one of the biggest scales to fall off my eyes. And it's made me super sensitive to the chants that we choose now, and super sensitive to stuff that I used to listen to, my Spotify playlists. And I'm listening to some of those and I'm thinking, whoa, somebody's making money on the sounds of people who we don't think of as our culture did not think of as people for centuries, thought of as animals for centuries.
And when I went and looked at the video of that chant, that specific chant that we're referencing, it was a white woman with feathers in her hair and a long skirt, like in like a field, and I'm hoping that my vulnerability and my honesty right now is connecting, is available so that our listeners could connect to it and like, maybe they might have more compassion for me than they, like, I know oftentimes I have more compassion for others than I do for myself. So I'm hoping that like my sharing can maybe help them extend that compassion to themselves, because like everything that you said, I'm like, yes, I agree with everything that you said. And I don't want to be a part of that. And yet I was parading around singing this song, feeling good about it. And now, like you said, the scales have been removed from my eyes, and I am aghast at myself that I could be so ignorant for so long. Not only as a human, but as like a leader, as someone who holds a position amongst other leaders in our circle, and that I was a part of that. I don't like, that's not who I want to be. So it's a hard process, and it's one that I value.
Yeah. I'm feeling what you're saying, and I get it. These songs, this music represents a connectedness that I yearn for, and that sometimes I get a touch of. And so these songs allow me, they sometimes help me to forge that connection. They sometimes help me to remember that at one point I had this moment of glory where, and so I get it. And I might, like, for one moment glimpse the actual connection that these original peoples had with the earth, with the mother. And so as a conduit, they're beautiful, they're phenomenal, and they represent a people who really, as a culture, no longer can sing those songs, but we can sing them. And I'm you mentioned the woman sitting out in the field with feathers in her hair. It's a beautiful picture, and it's one that I would love to be able to spend a lot of time just sitting out in the fields with you and our drums singing. And I also have to, as a part of a culture, a system, recognize that, can I really enjoy this music when the people who created this music, can I really enjoy this music that is based on tropes and trends of people who are no longer able to do it? And so what does that mean? And one of the things, and so this is horrible, this is sad, it's brutal. We're talking about oppression, and the way in which I grew a little bit through this process is that it encouraged me to think about, well, what would I sing if I'm singing to the earth? What would I sing if I'm forging that connection? And it's actually encouraging me to create more chants that don't have those tropes, that don't sound like I'm of a different culture.
Yeah, what would happen if we had chants about, like, I'm getting out of my ergonomic chair from behind my desk, and I
and touching the ground.
I drive my Toyota to a park, and I touch the cement, and I see the trees, and and I get a drink of water from the water fountain. But
from my thermos, my 32-ounce thermos,
right?
With the ice cubes in it that I made in my refrigerator.
Yeah, like water, you are here. You are sacred in my ice cubes in my thermos,
Yes.
But like, when you say that, like, that is a true expression, though. Like, why, this is a genuine question. This isn't anything else, but like, why don't we sing about, like earth, I feel you, like under my feet as I roll my ergonomic chair out from under my desk.
I feel you beneath the soles of my Clarks.
Yeah, right?
My Vans. Yes. Yeah. Well, just as an aside, this reminds me of when we were doing our apprenticeship, the ritual you led, where we were out with our phones taking pictures of the earth and various oh my gosh, yeah. Well, anyway, where we used technology as a part of what we were doing. We were using electronic technology as a part of what we were doing, and doing what was there, as opposed to envisioning ourselves out in this forest or whatever. Well, how do we celebrate air in a city? How do we celebrate earth in a city? And so I just remember that, it was so much fun.
But I like the tie-in that you're getting at, which is instead of using language and song and appropriating an experience, what if we were just honest about what our actual experience is? And that is new.
Wow.
That is new for me.
Yeah. It's so new. I'm not sure where we'll go with that, but even, and this is the power of words, right? Even our just talking about it means that it's going to be percolating in the back of our heads, no matter what we do. And it will come out. See, this is me reframing, so it's a little bit more positive, and it will come out in what I'm sure are going to be magnificent ways, right? Just because by virtue of us speaking it, by virtue of us saying it. So I think, again, it's the power of words, right? Okay, so let's talk about one other thing, and then because we don't want to have another episode. I mean, I would love to have another episode. Maybe we'll have a new podcast that's just on language, right? But another way that this has been something that the circle that we work with is a Dianic circle. It's women, just women, and we focus on female archetypes. And so that has just working within this group has made me aware of how male focused our language, or at least male privileged our language is. So in terms of creating ritual, creating parts of ritual or using ritual language, that the ways in which we can be sensitive to opening up to these feminine archetypes. And one of the things that I have also been doing is thinking more of balance. So one way in which I can think of balance as I'm thinking about working in ritual space is, there's the female, there's the male. We tend to focus on the female, but the balance actually is both and, right? Both and. And so, one of the things that we're seeing happening a lot is in the outside world right now is this kind of non-binary language in which the person's experience is reflected in that language, but it reveals the sense of self, which might be this, it could be this, that, or the other, but the idea is, as opposed to me looking at you and then wondering what category you fall in, allowing you to be who you are. And so I don't know what that looks like in ritual yet, but that's one of the things I'm also thinking about too, is what are the ways I can create, I can facilitate a ritual in which there's that much freedom. And that women can control. And I don't know what that looks like, but I'm just thinking about that.
Yeah. I'm sick and tired of my iPhone autocorrecting priestess to something else. I'm like, how many years do I have to be a witch and like type about being a priestess until like I can get this like patriarchal bullshit off my phone? Stop oppressing me, Apple.
Yeah, it's not learning it. Sometimes it learns things, but it's apparently not learning that. Or priestessing, when we say priestessing.
Well, priestessing, basically my phone explodes whenever I say priestessing. Like too many suffixes added on to this male noun.
Yeah. I mean, we have to. It's one of those things where eventually our phones will reflect who we are, right? Our electronics will reflect who we are. But in the meantime, at least we can start forging the path with something that can be, like you say, it can be simple, but it can also be very, very, very complex. So choosing words intentionally is simple, but it opens up these complexities of being and experience that can be really, really juicy.
One episode of one of our episodes a while ago where we interviewed Maggie, she brought up the use of the word priestess.
Yes.
A gender, as like a gender inclusive term. Mm-hmm. And that blew my mind. I had somebody so I'm a native English speaker and I took Spanish classes in middle school and high school. I just remember thinking gendered language is kind of dumb. In general, I was like, why does a cup need to be a boy or a girl? Like, it's a cup. Like, can't we just let it be a cup? But whenever Maggie made that comment about priestess, I'm like, oh, well, that's great. Or when I first joined our circle, we were going to have a table at our local pagan pride. And one of the facilitators asked, okay, well, who's going to man the table? And I was new to the group, so I didn't pick it up, but somebody else said, do you mean woman the table? And I remember being confused. I'm like, no, she said man the table. Like, I don't understand what's going on. And then it took me a while to develop this ability in my brain to recognize gendered language gendered language that I think is arbitrary. Like, why can't we staff the table? Or for a while we were saying, let's woman the table, and then a lot of people are like, wait, oh, now I get what
get us to think about it. Yes.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think, isn't that Brene Brown who said, like, I'm going to call God a woman until people stop, like, doing a double take when I say that. And, yes. And I think that's part of the power of language is that if it makes people do a double take, then it means that there's a buy-in there that maybe we even do unconsciously, like manning the table. Well, would a man want a woman the table?
Yeah, but it's just thinking about words that we just throw out, mm-hmm. and just being super intentional and super, just I was going to say super smart, but it's not even a matter of being smart. It's just a matter of being sensitive. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things, I can't remember if it was a different conversation. Well, I know it was a conversation that we had, but I don't remember the episode where people were chafing against, the new language. And one of the things that I think you said was, it's not being sophisticated or this, that, or the other. It's just being kind. It's just, not eliminating someone's existence verbally. Mm-hmm. And I mean, what's wrong with that? So as we think about words, I think it's going to be super, super valuable for us to take a moment and even before we say something simple, like going out to the grocery store, thinking about what those words mean. And I don't mean to imply that we should all be kind of like, paralyzed and not be able to talk, but just becoming sensitive to how we contribute to the energy of the world through our words is just going to make this place so much more beautiful.
And I hope our listeners have taken away, as they've walked through this episode and these episodes with us, is that I know for me, and I think this is true for you, that we're not any sort of like cutting edge experts. We haven't written the books on, we haven't run this, we haven't done the research and studies on this and published the books. We're just two witches doing the
best we can.
Learning as we learn and as we experience and as we facilitate, and just, for me, trying to know better so that I can do better. But it's just it's imperfect all along. And then, I'm hoping that the beloveds around me that hold sacred space with me will, hold that imperfection with grace and love as I try and do better and facilitate better and honor the real intent with my words.
Exactly. Thank you. So mote it be.
So mote it be.
So the poem that we're going to read is it's called Words Have Power by Ramneet Kaur. And that's Kaur. And she's actually pretty fascinating. She has a PhD in biotechnology with postdoctoral training from Harvard Medical School, Boston and Emory. She's super, super talented, I would imagine. She teaches at Columbus State University and Mercer University in Georgia. And she is pursuing research in cancer biology. And she just writes that poetry and sketching inspired by these are her words. Poetry and sketching inspired by my Sikh are my hobbies as they relax me in my busy life. Wonderful. Anyway, so let's go on to the poem.
Words have power. They can make, they can break.
They can heal, they can seal.
They can soothe, they can snooze.
Relaxing words, perplexing words.
Encouraging words, discouraging words.
Transformative words, informative words.
Magic of the words, power of the words. As we read that, it feels like a spell.
It really is a spell.
Thank you to our listeners for joining us today as we use our words to talk about words and the power of words and the impact of words and the magic of words.
We hope you have enjoyed the magic that has unfolded here at Witchy Wit.
It would be great if you would help make Witchy Wit possible and get access to exclusive content by donating on Patreon.
We'd love it if you join our Witchy community and enjoy shareable content on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube.
Would you do us a big favor and support us by rating and reviewing us wherever you get your podcasts? It's free and helps witchy folks find us.
Feel free to email us at witchywitpodcast@gmail.com. We love to hear from our community. Reach out and let us know what's brewing in your cauldron.
New episodes are released every second and fourth Friday. Follow us on your favorite podcasting platform so our episodes go right to your playlist. You can listen as you ride your broom.
Stay witchy, y'all!